Welcome back. Now, our eNCA elections analyst, Jan-Jan Joubert, joins me now. This is the right time. Jan-Jan, are you well?
It is the right time, and I'm well, thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, so listen, we heard from the ICC. Everything is over now. We know who did what and how they did it. So you've been monitoring everything with us here on eNCA from day one. Was it free and fair despite the challenges? Because that was the statement. What's your overall take?
Well, it's the job of the IEC to actually decide that. If somebody differs from them, they must go to court. So I'm not going to court. I think it was free and fair in the sense that no one was specifically disadvantaged more than anyone else. So in that sense, it was free and fair, absolutely. And I think it could have been done better, but we've done it now. We've come through. South Africans do.
Yep, exactly. And even the president was there. He said the people spoke. Even he mentioned that even those who didn't vote actually spoke. Even that yes. You don't vote, but that's almost saying something very loudly as well. Indeed. And he acknowledged that.
Well, yes. There's a quote by Jean-Paul Sartre, the French philosopher, which I'm going to misquote, but it comes down to every word means something, every silence too.
Yeah, very true. Okay, so before we talk about some of the hung municipalities and all the lovely complications and so forth, John Steenhuisen, the leader of the Democratic Alliance, he's been touting a couple of things. And, you know, if you notice, politicians like to throw something out there and see if somebody bites. Because there's no single party that seems to be able to take on the ANC in 2024 in the general elections. Yes, all this lovely stuff happened now, but it's a different story when it comes to the general election. He's bandying about the idea of a larger coalition coming together. You think there'll be any takers?
I think it is called trying to change the political narrative. The faster people move away from discussing the 2021 election and starting to discuss the 2024 election, probably the better for Mr. Steenhuisen. The question that one would want to ask is who should lead such a coalition? Which leader would be willing to serve under another? In the interests of this larger coalition, I don't know whether everybody hopes to just be the leader themselves.
Yeah, well, that's the question we're going to be asking as well, in terms of all these metros that hung, the municipalities that are hung, and all, the rest of it. Let's talk about coalitions and so forth. So far, we know DA does not want to get in bed with the ANC or the EFF, which leaves the Freedom Front Plus. And what role do you think these smaller parties are really going to play in this?
Okay, in the case of the DA and the Freedom Front Plus, the answer is easy, and the answer is yes, they will work together, because the Freedom Front Plus even campaigned on that platform, which is the strangest platform I've ever seen, but it worked for them. Their voters liked it. So the Freedom Front Plus is somewhat compelled to work with the DA. That would make a difference in a few municipalities, especially in the Western Cape, where the third largest municipality of George, as well as Saldanha Bay and 2 or 3 others, come into play in this regard. The other interesting thing, and we have mentioned it before, is that there is a path to retaining the mayoralty for the DA without the ANC or the EFF. If the DA, the Freedom Front Plus, Action SA, the ACDP and COPE were to work together, they can just about cobble together a coalition to govern the capital.
Yep, they can do so. Are we seeing the disappearance here of some of the names that we used to? I mean, you just mentioned COPE here. One would have thought there's certain parties, UDM, COPE, and them, would have grown. They've been around for quite a while now, with stalwarts, heading these parties, and people that left the ANC because they were disgruntled at some point, but they haven't seemed to have grown at all.
Well, time waits for no one, and the point here is, and I think that our dear friend Mr. Dennis Bloem, the COPE spokesperson, would not mind us saying that COPE didn't cope too well with these elections. I think they ended up with only 8 seats nationwide, but one of them is in Tshwane, and there they are a kingmaker if they want to be.
Yeah, with just the one.
With just the one. So every vote counts, and every seat counts.
Yeah, so true. Let's talk about the ATM as well. I mean, I was just watching an interview earlier on that we had here on eNCA with the spokesperson from the ATM, and they doubled their vote. It's not, I think they were 70,000 votes first time around, and then now it's 140,000 votes, and they're pretty happy about that. Is that something to celebrate?
Not really. They did somewhat better, but remember that there's a difference here that each rural voter, and their support's mainly rural, is sort of counted 3 times because each rural voter gets 3 ballots. It's a mistake many new parties make, that when they do well in the rural areas, that does not translate into an excellent performance in the general election, because every rural voter gets the same number of ballots as every urban voter, whereas in the municipal ballot, that is somewhat skewed in the favour of the rural voter, and therefore I would strongly advise the ATM to just look at the system again.
Okay. Are we focusing a lot more, too much on the metros and forgetting the rural vote itself? With significant things happening there, maybe?
No, not in the least. I mean, certainly not from our side, because, as you know, my colleague Wayne Sussman, who will be joining us a little later, he is the absolute expert on these rural councils. And if you look at what happened in these rural councils, it's been dramatic. The rural councils used to be a sea of green on that map of the IEC, but a council like the Lekwa Council, a river runs through it. It is the council in Standerton. The Vaal River runs straight through town. It also floods the banks every now and then. Those people have decided in Lekwa that they've had enough. I mean, the town is in a terrible condition, and they voted the ANC out, as has happened in many, many other municipalities. Now it's up to the opposition to see whether they can cobble something together. Otherwise, the ANC might well return.
And the thing is, I mean, we're talking about all these new people coming in, changes happening as well. Whoever comes in now, you know, whatever happens in these hung municipalities, whoever's won outright, whether it's a patriotic alliance and so forth, they've got 5 years to prove they can do the job, because the people have now seen they can change you, they can take you out. They've got the power of the vote. If you don't perform, if everything stays the same, 5 years' time, you're out.
And that has happened. And we've discussed the role of the Bushbuck Residents Association, who lit up the boards at the previous run of these elections, 2016, and now they're not even on the ballot. So it is, if you prove yourself, you can flourish. But if you do not prove yourself, you might decline and you may even vanish.
eThekwini has got to be one of the biggest surprises for you.
Indeed. I mean, what a calamity for the African National Congress to fall by. I think if I look at these things, and now I must just see whether, there it is, they fell by 14 percentage points, from 56 to 42%. The problem there is they now have to work together with a lot of parties, and you know what the situation is. I mean, the mayor of eThekwini, Mrs. Gamedi, had to leave under rather suspicious circumstances. There's much to be seen when all those cobwebs are being removed from whatever happens in those cities, in those city council offices. And therefore I would say that some people in the ANC would be pretty nervous about that result.
Oh, you're saying some people are going to come in now and be looking at the books now and say, oh gosh,
I don't know,
a lot more things. We could be seeing a lot more dirt will be uncovered, is what you're saying, basically, because we've got new faces now. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that we don't know what we're going to find, because new faces will be looking. Will there be dirt? Will there be excellence? We'll know, but we'll have a new look on stuff, because more people will be looking at those books and at those offices and what happened there.
Okay. Julius Malema was also saying a little bit earlier on that don't compare the EFF. It's not a regional party. Don't compare them to like Action eNCA, those type of parties. They themselves, the DA and the ANC, are a national party. That's how we must look at them, you know. And that politics is a long, it's a long hog. It's for the long road. Is it also trying to explain, maybe like John Steenhuisen, a little too much?
I think they mean different things, as politicians do, by using the same words. In the case of Mr. Malema, his party's growth trajectory has been quite significant. But in this case, it's been rather differentiated, in the sense that the EFF has actually gone backwards in some of the metros, especially in Tshwane. They've grown nicely for them, but in the rural areas. Is the EFF on the way to become a more rural party? If so, how does that fit in with the whole concept of an industrialized, revolutionary sort of situation? It's rather hard to do if you don't have industries to do it with.
I think the other thing as well, when you look at the EFF from an experience point of view, they can't really point at anything, can they? To say, listen, like let's say you've got the DA, they can look at municipalities in Cape Town, even Midvaal here in Gauteng, and say, listen, we've done well. Midvaal, they've actually done well. So EFF can't really point at anything right now to say, listen, we've been in charge over there, and look at how brilliantly we've done. They now need to graduate to that level, don't they?
Unless they do.
Yeah, unless they do.
Listen to this. One of the ways in which the EFF has approached this whole concept of coalitions and cooperative governance agreements is that they've left the door open in the past to perhaps do sort of a government swap. Where, for instance, if they need the ANC in Tshwane and the ANC needs them in Johannesburg, I'm just putting it out there, what they've been amenable to have been to say, okay, you rule the one and we'll rule the other. What the EFF does not want, and this is what Mr. Malema says, is to be in coalition where they co-govern. But he said nothing about governance swapping. We must ask him that, but in the past they've been amenable to it.
Yep. All right, we'll see what happens. Jan-Jan, thank you so much for for the long ride. It's been fun. It's been fantastic.
And it's not over yet. After 9 it continues.
Yeah, after 9, yes, of course. I'm going to chat to you a little bit later on, but so much interesting stuff. We could go on and on and on. We'll talk to Jan-Jan a little bit later on.